Welcome to the Homegrown podcast. I'm your host, Liz Haselmayer, along with my husband, Joey, who at this very moment is resting from a very long and exciting moose trip. I can't wait to share with you guys. You guys know he's been training very hard. But our mission on this podcast is to inspire, educate, and equip you in your pursuit of true nourishment. Today's episode is going to be interesting. It's just me today. And it's kind of a behind the scenes show. I put up a question box on my Instagram a few days ago and was shocked to see that a lot of you guys wanted to know about our homeschooling routine. And this got me thinking about the way we've structured our life in general. So this episode is going to be all about creating a life you love and creating a family culture that suits what you guys want to do and pursue as a family team. So I'm excited. This is kind of different content. So let me know if you like this type of episode. We can certainly be sharing more of these, but I will miss my co-host today, but he's getting some much needed rest. So I want to start out by explaining exactly what our family has going on for context, because when I talk about creating a life you love, everyone's life looks so different from so many different facets, right? So yes, we are a homeschooling family, and we will talk about all the nitty-gritty of homeschooling in this show, but we also are an entrepreneurial family. So I have Homegrown, this thing that hosts a podcast that sells resources in physical and digital copies and has an Instagram community that we are culturing and creating, cultivating, not culturing. I guess maybe you are culturing, but an Instagram community that we are creating content for. We have a YouTube channel. We have an email list that we write newsletters. We have blogs that we regularly update on our regular website. And then we have a Substack community, which is like a private community, totally separate. So that in and of itself, Homegrown as an umbrella is its own full thing. And that is something that I am carrying most of the weight of. We also have a products business called Haselmayer Goods that you guys hear us talking about at the end of most episodes, just kind of sharing what we're loving recently or things that we're excited to launch on the shop. And this came out of a need to, one, share things that people were kept asking us about, like what kind of coffee do you drink? What do you use for your dish soap? Like, what do you mean you use a solid lard bar? That's so weird. How can I find that? So we went out, we found producers that aligned with our standards and our ethics, and we asked them, hey, we want you to come and produce for Haselmayer Goods. We're going to open up an online retail market and get this stuff accessible to folks all across the country and in Canada, which is super exciting. So Haselmayer Goods is its own thing. We do have other family members that are a part of that, but Joey and I are still very much involved and steering that ship's direction, right? And then Joey himself has his own business. I'm actually wearing the shirt right now because, I'm at that stage of pregnancy where I got to wear all of Joey's shirts. But he has his own business. And I used to say he's a small business owner. It's still categorized as a small business, but it's not a small thing. He owns a company locally in town that has physical facilities for market research and is also a creative meeting space for Fortune 500 clients, all the way down to mom and pop shops, like all kinds of people in the business realm. He is helping serve in a capacity of either facilitating their market research or giving them space to host events and creative strategy meetings. So it's called the living room because it's supposed to feel like you can walk into a space and let your guard down a little bit and dig into those important conversations as if you're in your own living room. So that is something that is completely separate from everything else we have going on. Haselmayer Goods and Homegrown have a little more overlap because they really stemmed out of the same kind of passion. And the living room is something that has been a family business that Joey has been a part of for the last 12 years. So he does have his own quote 9 to 5. Although if you are a business owner, you know there's no such thing as 9 to 5. So he is in an office working every day, doing his own thing. And the thing I want to point out is that these three businesses, Homegrown, Haselmayer Goods, and Living Room, all rely on Joey and I waking up every day thinking about them in some capacity And that adds an extra weightiness to the way we schedule our days and our weeks. That makes it incredibly interesting when we want to take off time, or when we want to travel, or when we want to take a break from maybe a weekly Sabbath, right? We have to be really intentional about these things because we are involved in the monetary gains of our family and extended family, but also because we have staff and other families who rely on us, and we don't take that lightly. So we view business stewardship as a very, very serious thing in our family. And you'll kind of hear that throughout this show about how we've structured our life. So that's kind of what we have going on. Also, to mention, if you are new here, we have 3 daughters, 13, 8, and 4. I am currently 8 months pregnant with our 4th baby. And so we have a growing family in the midst of all this. We have, I think that covers kind of what we're going through. So that is what we have going on. And I want to talk about moving more into just some of the bullet points that I wrote down regarding how to structure a life you love. Because I talked to so many women specifically who are like, I would love to homeschool. I'm just not sure how to fit it all in. Or I really like the idea of doing maybe part-time school or hybrid schooling, doing something less traditional, less conventional, but I'm just not sure how to do that. Or every single caveat that exists, all things that I said at one time too. By the way, if I was the person that was like, I will never homeschool. That's weird. I'm not going to do that. I will never homeschool. My kids will go to public school. I went to public school. I was just fine. I was that naysayer, okay? So if you are in that headspace too, just know that I've also been that version of myself as well. And the same thing with like birth. I used to say I would never give birth without pain medication. And now look at me planning my second home birth. It's wonderful how we change and grow, and we hold space for ourselves to do that. So the first thing I want to talk about in creating a life that you absolutely love is really such a basic concept of not overcommitting. And this means purposefully creating white space. And this is also in your schedule, but then also just mentally, you are not cluttering up your head and your energy with all of the million things that you think you need to get done. This means that you are really choosy about things like extracurricular activities. You are really choosy about which types of homeschooling curriculum you use. There's certain curriculums that are so wonderful and so all-encompassing and beautifully designed, but they would not suit my family because each lesson requires an hour and a half and a big science project or a big to-do with each lesson that honestly, realistically, I wouldn't be able to fit into my weeks. I wouldn't want to fit into my weeks. If I stumble upon something like that, I'll save that for the special occasions, but I would never fill in that portion of my day so rigidly with something that requires my time and energy and honestly a lot of materials. Sometimes it can be pricey when you have a big list of supplies for a lesson that you have to do, and you have to ask yourself, is this really important to get across the lesson, or is this just fun and something really exciting to do? So creating white space in your days. So for us, what that looks like, we have been homeschooling for 8 years. So I was just talking to my sister-in-laws, and it's funny, you always hear if you don't sit down and like start focusing on your work, like I could always send you to public school. We're laughing because that's like such a common quote threat among homeschooling moms. And I was like, after 8 years, I just think my kids don't believe me. Like they know we're probably not changing our situation anytime soon unless we have a really big life change. And so it's just so funny when you've been in this rhythm for 3, 4, 5 years and you really get used to that, you sink into it, you shake off some of that nervous energy of the first year homeschool mom or second year homeschool mom, where you still feel like everything is like, am I doing this right? Like, are you sure this is right? Am I allowed to even be doing this? I totally remember what that feels like. But I've shaken off some of that in the 8 years that we've done this. So our days in terms of creating white space are very open. I do not have anything scheduled for us in the morning time. And the main anchoring scheduled block of time during the week is our enrichment program. And so I think that's really helpful to have something one day a week where okay, this is kind of the start over of the next week's work cycle. And our kids take a number of classes at a local enrichment program. So that can be anything from a robotics class or an art class or a music class or literature and composition. It can be both academic and both kind of falling more in that extracurricular. And so there are wonderful, many plethora of enrichment program opportunities for us where we are in the Midwest. And I assume as homeschooling continues to grow in its popularity, that wherever you are, you'll be able to find at least one or two options in your area of a quote enrichment program or co-op or whatever word is common in your region. So really choosing the co-op or enrichment program that we have stuck with right now has been important because of a few things. We've done others in the past. We have played around with the day of the week that it falls on. And you just have to figure out what works best for you. There's several co-ops that are either you show up and the parent stays the whole time and they often teach a class or they volunteer and they participate in cleanup. And those are great because they're usually a little cheaper because it's more parent-led. But then there are co-ops where it's really a drop-off situation and you drop your kids off when their first class starts and then they manage themselves throughout the day and you pick them up when their last class ends. And so those are also helpful. They can be a little bit more pricey because you are paying the teachers usually a higher price because you are not there, right? You're sacrificing the financial means for the convenience of not having to stay on site. But that can be really helpful if you have little babies or small children who are not yet school age and you weren't really sure what to do with them during the day if you had to stick around and be on campus. So we have done both, and both are wonderful for different seasons of your life. But even choosing the co-op or enrichment program or whatever, even just taking a basic local class, maybe at your community center or your library, think about how that's going to impact your week showing up every single week. So having that one sort of anchoring event is really helpful. And then after that, I am so choosy with what we do with the rest of our time. I don't want to wake up Monday morning with 3 commitments already on my calendar. I want to have enough space to where, and this gets tied back into why I'm even talking about entrepreneurship and family balance in this homeschooling episode as well, is because I have other stuff going on aside from just schooling my children in the morning and afternoon hours. I have other things that I'm responsible for besides math lessons and science lessons and handwriting and reading. So keeping that in mind, it's so important for me to build in white space in my days. So this is what it looks like. Recently, I'll wake up, who knows what time, 4 a.m. unfortunately is recently when I've been waking up, but I go back to sleep. It's pregnant problems. But I'll wake up usually before my kids have coffee. They'll come down. I'll give my kids an hour to really eat and settle into the day. And then I would like to get the bulk of our quote work done while our minds are still fresh. During the weekdays, typically, today was an anomaly, but typically there's no screen time during the weekdays, so that the temptation of like, can I watch a show is taken off the table. And it really, like, they can start their day by crafting. We can get the art kit out. They can color. It's a great way to just ease into the day. And I think that really helps prepare us. We're not a rigid start by 9 a.m., but I would like to see us rolling into some sort of schoolwork activity around 10 a.m. because I know it'll take about 2 hours to work through some schoolwork with my 3rd grader. And I want to give her that time. And I also know that by the time we get close to lunch and then we are heading into the afternoon, again, I have other things that are calling on my attention and my responsibility. And so I can't just say that this block of time from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. is solely school. I've never been in a situation where that has been the case. I've always worked in some capacity, either for myself, as I'm doing now, or for someone else, like a freelance job. So if you, again, this is a great breakdown. If you're someone who's always been interested in homeschooling, but you have to work or you want to work in some capacity, I think most people who I know who homeschool and have multiple children, multiple age ranges, they also have some extra either work or volunteer obligation. And so the idea that homeschool moms, their only thing they have to worry about is getting lessons done in the day just isn't accurate. And that's beautiful, because what that should show you is that our capacity is so much greater. We have so much ability to be able to spin multiple plates, and homeschooling doesn't have to be this giant unbearable weight on us. It can easily fit into our days as long as we're being careful about the things that we say yes to. So like I said, I spent about 2 hours with my third grader, and that might seem like a lot of time to you. That might seem like not enough time to you. And here's the deal. 2 hours one-on-one with her means like we're not breaking in between. We're going directly from handwriting to reading practice to some language arts lessons to math. And from there, I'll assess, how's her energy level? How's she doing? Is she crushing it? Does she want to do an extra math lesson? Does she want to go back to more reading? We can really fly through her reader. She's loving the story. I can adjust within that time frame and just work with how she's feeling and her energy. I also have an 8th grader, and I think something that to me feels very normal and natural, because it's just how we've always done it, is that once my kids hit about 3rd or 4th grade and they are very strong readers and they have been in the rhythm of some sort of schooling at home for that amount of time, they really don't require much help from me. And maybe I am an anomaly and I just have a really responsible type A firstborn, and my other children will be different. I totally recognize that could be true. But right now, in my current season of life, the amount of homeschooling that I'm actually doing with my oldest, who's in the 8th grade, is very minimal. I will help her occasionally with a writing assignment because that was my thing in college and in school. Writing has always been a passion of mine. It's come really easy to me, so I'll help her with a writing assignment. I also taught IEW at various co-ops in the past, so I'm kind of familiar with how that curriculum works, and she's taking those classes. So I'll hop in and help her with that, or she'll read an answer to me and she'll say, how does this sound to you? And I'll say, that's good. Maybe you can elaborate more here. But in terms of sitting down with her over her shoulder and working through, okay, now we need to do a math lesson. Now we need to do a language arts lesson. Now we need to do your science. I don't ever do that. And I frankly haven't done that for years. So I really I focus 95% of my attention on our early elementary, that mid-elementary age range, that 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade years. Those 4 years are really foundational, and that's where I'm honing in. Maybe it's just convenient for me because all my kids are 4 years apart, so I've only kind of had the opportunity to really be focused on that one child. But even if you have kids closer in age, don't feel like you can't school them together in a similar grade level, even if their ages fall slightly outside of that. You can always tailor content to your kids. If your kids are 2 years apart, I would be doing very similar things with them and just tweaking or challenging the older kid in unique ways, but not feeling like I have to recreate the wheel with each year because of, quote, a grade level. So that's just my encouragement there. I feel it's important to mention that I am focusing those 2 hours on one child, and she's in the third grade, and it has been working really well for us. Now, what does my 4-year-old do in that time? That's also a consideration because I've homeschooled with a newborn and a toddler and little babies, right? Because I have my kids apparently every 4 years is what we're doing. And I'm about to enter into that season again. And what has worked well for me, again, keeping that morning space open. Usually your baby goes down for a morning nap. Mine does around 9 a.m., right? So we'll use that nap time to really get breakfast and schoolwork going. There's also some elements of our schoolwork and homeschool day where you start over your kid's shoulder. Okay, this is the directions. And then you can walk away for a minute. So being realistic about like, hey, I can maybe do like a morning basket situation where I can get them started with something, give them an activity, give them a coloring sheet of some kind, and then walk away, finish cooking the breakfast, and come back. Whereas other times where we're doing reading or math, I'm really there every second of that for coaching along those lessons. So figuring out even within your day what you're starting with and what you have flexibility for. So my 4-year-old right now, honestly, she just plays. She crafts, she'll play. We will often get out the art kit, like I said, in the morning. And so that will already be down, and she'll have like coloring pages, or she'll be cutting up paper and gluing it together, or she'll play with kinetic sand or something like that. We are not using screens right now, although I'm not against it if it's an absolutely necessary thing. But on a regular basis, she is able to play and self-sustain. And a lot of times she's super excited about like the idea of school that she wants me to print her off little activities. And so a great little free resource is, I believe it's education.org. I'll link it in the show notes. And you can download, I think, up to 5 worksheets for free each month. So if you stay on top of that and you get your 5 in each month, you can download quite a bit throughout the year and save them to your computer. Or I think you can sign up for like $3 a month or something and get wider access. But you can print off everything from pre-K all the way up to high school worksheets. And so if you just go in and type like handwriting for kindergarten or math lessons or coloring pages for preschool, you can find something easy that doesn't feel sketchy when you're clicking on the link to print it, because there's some websites where you're like, I don't know about that. And I will happily print off something for her. Now, I'm never pushing my 4-year-old to start schoolwork. That's another thing I want to cover here in this first intro section, is that we don't really press into formal schoolwork, like pencil in your hand, sitting down, writing on a worksheet, until like 6.5 or 7 years old. And there's a few reasons for that. Not saying that we deny our kids access to educational content before then, but we really wait until they're really, really ready. And then we find that if we delay that just a little bit longer than maybe like the typical 5-year-old entering to quote kindergarten, their skill sets excel just way, way faster. So you're not going over your ABCs and your 1, 2, 3s for a year and a half. You're doing it for 2 weeks, and then they get it, and then you move on. And so it's kind of like if you delay that a little bit, and keep in mind I have no early childhood education to back this up, but what I've seen in my family is that if I delay that a little bit until I see true signs of readiness, not just age, but true signs of readiness in my kids, that they are ready to start fully grasping these concepts, they will get that stuff so fast. And so that's been really helpful for me, because I'm more on the efficiency side of homeschooling and less on the really crafty, fluffy, creative side of homeschooling. I know that there are definitely mothers who pour their passion into their homeschool day, and their homeschool looks a lot more maybe fun and robust. But for me, I take more of a minimal approach. And so if that's you, just know that there's nothing that says you have to start at 5 years old. In fact, your state will tell you when compulsory school is, what age that starts at. And for us in Ohio, I believe that age is 6. So that should tell you something. You can look into that in your own state. So just creating white space. That was a very long-winded way of saying that It is super important to not overcommit your days. And I think it can be easy when you're starting homeschooling to say, oh, I need this class and I need to take this thing and you need to go to the park on these days. And I would say don't schedule anything until you're like 3 weeks in. Just do 3 weeks of just work at home. Keep it very minimal. And then when you're ready to add on throughout the week, throughout the rest of the year. So that's kind of my first bit of that. The next part is talking about outsourcing help. And this can be in the form of tutors, of, like I said, enrichment programs. We did several years where we did no co-op at all. That is 100% an option. You don't have to do a co-op. You don't have to be a part of anything. You don't have to do classical conversations. You don't have to do anything. You can simply be at home and follow a curriculum of your choosing or multiple different types of curriculum. Those are all acceptable answers to the homeschool question. But just know that getting sort of outsourced help can look like enrolling your kids in a enrichment program. For example, for me, my daughter is in a few science classes because, again, I am not super prone to the big science exploration endeavors. There are certain subjects within science that I love to talk about that I'm like, yes, like anything nature, agriculture, cooking, food science, sign me up for. I'll handle that at home. But aside from that, there are other things that I would never know how to teach, like robotics that one of my daughters is taking. So there are always places where you can outsource help, and that can look like you're paying to send your kids to a community class, an enrichment program, a co-op. You're hiring a tutor who's either coming into your home or you're going to their home. Totally valid. That is something that Joey, my husband, as he was growing up and being homeschooled, he did a lot of tutoring. Really helpful for his mom. And also the other thing that can look like outsourcing help is the curriculum that you choose. For example, for many, many years, we dotted around various math curriculums. We did Horizons, we did Saxton, we did The Good and the Beautiful. And eventually, when it got to a certain point, I was like, you know what? I need something more all-encompassing. I need something that is the complete package, that will teach the lesson, grade the homework, grade the tests. I need it all. So we chose teaching textbooks, I think starting in like the 5th or 6th grade, I believe. And that has been so helpful because, like I said, it's for a subject that doesn't come super naturally to me. I was struggling to answer my daughter's questions when she was asking. So I said, you know what? We're going to outsource this and we're going to buy a curriculum that's a little bit more hands-off for the parent because the program has covered it all. The other way I've sort of outsourced help is by asking then my father to work through problems that my daughter is having more trouble understanding. And so once a week, they do math together. So our oldest will do 4 lessons a week on her own at home at her own pace, save any questions that she has for her grandpa and who loves math and is retired. But if you don't have a family member in town who fits that criteria, you can hire a math tutor, right? You can have your kid work through the curriculum, do as much as they can on their own. Any questions or any problem areas where they feel like they're getting stuck or they can't quite grasp a concept, then they can work through that on the tutor's time. And that way you can really leverage the amount of time that you're using when you are paying someone to help school your child. I think it's a wonderful way to give your kids also some accountability to someone other than you. Super helpful in that. And for me personally, I love the time spent in the multi-generational relationship with my daughter and her grandfather. So I think that's very sweet. So outsourcing help, again, can look like tutors, enrichment programs, curriculum, and you should have lots of opportunity within that scope. From there, my other encouragement, and this is kind of stepping a little bit even further out from just zoning in on homeschool specifically, but I think in creating the life you love, choosing and being really honest about that day's priority has been really helpful for me. So I know sometimes it can be easy to say, well, you just need to choose a priority, get your priorities straight within the home. And something that people don't talk about enough is that priority should probably be changing daily. So if my priority every morning is just to keep the cleanest house possible, other things are always going to continually fall off the list, and they're never going to get the proper attention that they need because my priority hasn't shifted. It hasn't been flexible. But if my priority one day is, hey, I want to start the school week off strong. We're going to hit 2 math lessons. We're going to do maybe an extended reading period. We're actually going to go to the library and get some new books. And then we're going to come home and practice some handwriting, but also maybe like watch a documentary together. That's a very full day of educational content, in my opinion. And so that day's priority would be schooling. That would say, okay, today, this afternoon, when Joey comes home from work and he's like, hey, how was your day? I'm like, it's great. We crushed a bunch of schoolwork. I feel like we got really far ahead in these areas. We were able to give ourselves some extended period of time where I saw this confidence kind of jump in this daughter, and it was wonderful. But you know what? Sorry, it's kind of messy in here. I'm getting to that now. Things shift, okay? We're not doing it all the time. Another example of that would be, there are plenty of days where I need to get the girls going with school and they can handle what they're doing on their own. And I also need to package orders. I am the one who ships out all of the books that we sell at Homegrown Education. And for a while there, I really wrestled with that. Like, how am I going to make that a practical part of my life? And should I even be doing that, or should I be hiring help for this? And I just found that when I stopped waking up every morning feeling like I had to have the same exact 3 priorities day after day after day, I realized that I could block my time differently. So I can still get some schoolwork done with the girls. It might look like a lighter day. It might look like, hey, let's go ahead and get handwriting going. I have half an hour. I can sit down. We can read this awesome book. And 30 minutes of dedicated, your third grader is reading to you is intense. Okay, that's a lot of progress. So I'm here for it, but it's only 30 minutes. It's quick in the grand scheme of the day. And then maybe we eat some lunch, and then I'll say, okay, let's do a math lesson. And then I'll print out some worksheets that maybe coincide with the math lesson, but didn't come with a curriculum, but they're practicing a concept that you are doing in your schoolwork. Maybe it's borrowing from the tens in subtraction, or it's multiplication. Okay, we just covered that in your math lesson, but now I can give you something to give a little extra practice if you need it. I'm not going to give you busy work. I don't do that. But if you need something to kind of boost your confidence, you can do that. And then I can open my computer, get my printing stuff out, get my label printer out, and package books, which, if I'm being honest, doesn't take hours. Okay, it's very doable. But that might look like, for that day, a little bit of work and a little bit of schooling. It also looks like, on Fridays we record the podcast, and our kids know that. And so for that day's priority, school, it might be that the first 4 days of the week we did a lot of school, and then Friday we're not doing much because mom and dad have 2 interviews, and our kids know that this podcast is very important to us, and we show up and we want to honor our guests that we have on the show, and that's our priority that day. And then, of course, the inevitable, the one that always will let you know when it needs to be a priority, is when you wake up and you think, I got to clean this house. So this is a great way to say you can still get schoolwork done. You can still get work done. Maybe you have to film a reel. Maybe you'll have to write a post or a caption. Those things can fit in the margins as well. But you're going to be spending like a good 2-3 hours deep cleaning your house, or like getting your kitchen restocked, going to the grocery store, stocking your pantry, stocking your fridge. I call those blessing days because I think I used to dread it so much, but then I think what a blessing it is. I get to feed my family. But we all know what that kind of housework day feels like. And that could be a Saturday if you want. But if it has to fall on your weekday, just know that you can have a priority for the day and still get other things done. But it's going to flex each day. If again, I wake up every day with the exact same top priority and I never budge that, I don't leave room to get the other things done. And then they are just I would be always feeling like I was behind. So that's just an encouragement to you. The next part of that kind of goes hand in hand with creating your true priority and understanding that it changes daily. This next part is minimizing distraction. I think especially as this generation of stay-at-home moms, it's so easy for us to be distracted. And I don't mean distracted with like real life things going on. I mean like distracted mentally because we're scrolling Instagram. I mean distracted mentally because we are comparing ourselves to our friend who's in a different life stage as us or in a different financial bracket, and it's bothering us, and that's what we're thinking about. Okay, we're dwelling on things that we shouldn't be dwelling on. We shouldn't be spending our energy in that way. And so minimizing our distractions is really helpful in creating the life you love, because you can waste so much time just by getting lost in the Instagram algorithm, okay? They are purposefully feeding you content to lock you in and have you keep scrolling on their app. And that's okay as long as you understand how that can serve you in your life, if it's serving you in your life. So minimizing distraction looks like maybe you're paring down your feed. Maybe you don't follow 2,000 people. Maybe you only follow 500 people, and you follow the accounts that give you inspiring content or uplifting stuff or family and friends that you just want to keep up to date with. Or maybe you're not looking at the news multiple times a day. Maybe you're not even reading the news until maybe something comes up in conversation. Maybe you're so locked in, you just have a newspaper show up at your door and you don't even worry about the interwebs for your news information. That would be amazing. That would be an example of minimizing distraction, pulling yourself out of this perpetual state of consuming content and cluttering your mind, and allowing yourself to focus on what matters. I know that I have lived many months so distracted, and then the end of those days, I always feel the most overwhelmed. I always feel the most overstimulated. And when I think about what I really did that day, I'm like, that's embarrassing. I didn't really do a whole lot. And yet here I am feeling like I'm exhausted and drained. What is that? Well, I was scrolling on social media. I was getting caught up in things that weren't my business. I was worrying about what other people thought about me in a way that, again, wasn't my business, and it didn't produce any fruit in my life. So minimizing your distractions mentally. I think also this can apply physically. I totally am on the team. The mess can't wait for my mental health. Like this is such a thing on Instagram, ironically, but two sides of the coin, right? The mess can wait. Just get your stuff done, mama. Like, you do you, and then don't get stressed out by, like, don't feel like you have to maintain a perfect home all the time. There's that camp. But then there's also the other camp that's like, listen, I'm in my home all day, every day. The mess can't wait because it's giving me anxiety looking at this mountain of effort I have to put forth in the future because I have to clean this, because I don't live like this. And I do this thing called like dirty clean. It's this weird little, I'm cleaning up, but I'm not cleaning up fully. Here's an example. If I always have dishes. I always have dishes to do. But I'm not always washing every dish, drying it, and putting it away. So I will rinse all the dishes in my sink and stack them nicely. I will spend energy stacking the dishes in my sink nicely while I wait for the dishwasher to finish its cycle, and then come back to that later. But you know what? It's a whole lot better to rinse my hands while I'm cooking in a sink that has some nicely rinsed and stacked dishes that I still know are dirty, but it's not like gross food everywhere. It's not like pooling up with dishwater. It's dirty clean. It's what I call it in my head. Or the counter. I will stack any like mail or whatever we might have and put it in one spot. And while it's not fully taken care of, it's dirty clean. I will fold the laundry and leave it on a stack on my couch in the room that I don't sit on as much. And that is my dirty clean. Okay, I don't know if this makes sense to you, but it's just the idea that you are tidying up, but you are also not doing everything to full completion because you just don't have time in that moment and it's not your priority. Maybe today's not the housework day that you are going to just hammer out and get everything done. Maybe you're just tidying it up so that your visual clutter is minimized and you can breathe. And then the other way that I want to encourage you to minimize distraction is also socially. I know this is kind of maybe controversial, but you don't have to attend everything you're invited to. You don't have to book your calendar with 4 dates a week that you have to show up for things. You can really minimize your distraction socially, especially with your kids. If it's not something that you feel like is really benefiting you or serving your kids or serving their friendships, you don't feel like you have to show up to every single park day. Don't feel like you have to show up to every single homeschool outing. If it becomes a distraction to your life and your family's greater mission, skip that one. Maybe go next week. But minimizing distraction has been really helpful in creating the life we love. One of my final points is and this is so important, right, is to get your kids on mission. Get them on board. And what this means is I recently sat my kids down and I looked at them. Joey was at work. We have these things called family meetings. We do them pretty regularly when we have something that we need to communicate fully and we need all girls' attention. And we usually have specific challenges or specific areas of growth that we want to present to each kid. Like if I notice, like, listen, y'all, the house is a disaster. It is a mess in here. We're changing up our chores responsibility, family meeting. Okay, so this was one of those moments where it was just me. I like to do them with Joey as well, but he was at work. So I sat the girls down and I said, listen, we are about to have a little baby in our home. And I said, we are a high-performing family. And, what does that mean? What does a high-performing family mean? Well, we had just done the interview with Lauren, who is a mother of 7, has a farm and a homestead, homeschools her kids. And it was, if you haven't listened to that show, it is balm to your homeschooling mother heart. I mean, it's just so much wisdom in that show. But the whole time we were in that, I thought, you are a high-performing family. You are someone who is not just doing the baseline, but you're chasing after something that goes above and beyond what we typically see exhibited in society today. High-performing families have lofty goals for their future. High-performing families have a lot of responsibility, a lot of personal responsibility. Again, this comes back to the whole entrepreneurship, business ownership thing. It's different than the weightiness that you would feel when working for an employer. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the weightiness is different. High responsibility usually means that you also have to be high performing, right? Otherwise, you're not meeting those expectations. And so I told the girls, we're a high performing family. I said, listen, we're about to have 4 kids. We are on a mission to run these 3 very different, very needy businesses. And we want to do them well. We want to steward our businesses well. We also want to grow you children well. We want to have the biggest impact in your lives and raise those wildly capable kids that we always talk about. And we're chasing after some things pretty aggressively as a family. So as a high-performing family, I need y'all on board because when I have a baby, the house is going to look different. And so what I did is I actually called out specific things in my kids that I said, this is how this is going to look in the coming months. And these are the areas I want you to focus on. For my 13-year-old, I recognized she's so helpful in almost all the categories because she's 13. But where could I really utilize her most in my postpartum experience? And I thought the house. I think keeping her locked into helping with running laundry, helping me in the kitchen with food and dish cleanup. And then overall, if there's tasks that I need, like emptying the farm coolers or um, setting things out, putting things away, in general, I need your help on here. I then looked at my middle daughter and I said, I'm going to be asking a lot more of you in terms of making sure that your little sister is taken care of and that you're stepping more into that nurturing relationship with her and that you are keeping tabs on where she's playing and making sure that she's not going outside without letting someone know, or you're finding fun games for you guys to play together. You're doing things together. I wanted her to move into more of that, not babysitting role, but more of that nurturing role with her youngest. And my youngest 4-year-old, I said, I want you to continue to work on your independence and continue to work on your listening skills and just continuing to do what we ask of you. But other than that, you're 4. So keep doing your thing, girl, because we're still here to support you. You're still tiny enough to not really have to carry a lot of the burden of the family. And I think that that is a beautiful space to hold and protect. So that would obviously look different if we were on a homestead, right? And that's kind of where this whole idea came from, just talking to Lauren and like, wow, she really involves her kids. And that's how she's able to do all these things. Getting my kids on board has been really, really helpful. So for the last 2 years, my kids know every Friday we record podcasts. They know what to do. They also know, and they've watched us go in and out of different seasons of doing this well and not doing this well, but like the weekends are a period for rest and for Sabbath, and that we might have times where we are coming off of a really busy season and we need to just unplug and relax. And so we do that and we tell them that that's what we're doing. Getting our family on board, getting our kids on mission has been really, really important. And then what you can do is after you have that kind of ceremonial conversation, you can then refer back to that and say, hey, remember when we sat down and had the conversation about what our household's going to look like after this baby's born? Yeah, remember how I'm wanting to see more of this in you? This is a great way to practice that. Let's go ahead and practice it. And then they have context for why you're asking them to help your sister put on her shoes. Okay, it's not just like a random thing. They're like, oh, okay, this was my thing that this was the task I was given. So, I thought this episode would be a lot shorter, but apparently there's a lot to say about creating a life you love. And so this very final point, this very final question I want to leave you with is to ask yourself, what is your family structure built to support? This is going to be really important if you are considering making a change or if you're in a specific rhythm that doesn't feel like it's working. Ask yourself, what is my family structure built to support? And here's a great example. A lot of the time when you see homeschooling families, it's not uncommon to also see that those homeschooling families also work for themselves, or they are entrepreneurs, or they're small business owners, or they're large business owners. It doesn't matter the size of the company. It's just the idea of this autonomy usually goes hand in hand with their schooling choices and their employment choices. That is not a coincidence. One of the reasons that is because the family structure is already built upon this idea of heightened responsibility and autonomy. Not saying that this is better or worse. I'm just saying that's what that family structure is built to support. I recently, not recently, but in past, I've had conversations with friends who say, my husband would love to hunt and I would love to have the hunt game. And, I really wish he would get into it. But then they stop and look at me because they've seen me go through years and years and years of hunting seasons. And they say, but you know what? I don't know that I'm really up for having a hunting husband. And I would say, you know what? That is really good self-awareness. that tells me that your family structure is not built to support having a hunting husband. Okay, that sounds dramatic maybe, but if you are a hunter wife, a very and one that's similar to Joey, who he dabbles in nothing, he goes full force in everything, you understand that you have to build your family structure. You have to be okay with weeks out of your fall and winter months being home alone with your kids. You have to be okay with that. It can't be that every single hunting season comes up and you are fighting over how much time he's spending in the woods. If that's happening, something about your family structure is not supportive of his hunting, whether it be a hobby or for provision. Either way, you have to support your family in that. I would put that in the category of like intensive hobbies, right? It's not just a hobby because you're providing meat for your family, hopefully, but it takes a tremendous amount of time. Another example is if you want to do the homeschool, very home-centric lifestyle, but your physical house is not a space you feel really comfortable in. That's part of your family structure. Is that built to support your dream of having a home-centered life? And if not, you might need to change that. You might need to change things inside of your home. You might need to move. You might need to buy a different house. You might need to downsize so your house isn't so overwhelming. You might need to remodel, repaint, reorganize, whatever that means, so that that space is conducive for the lifestyle that you want. And the reason I'm leaving you with this is because I want you to sort of take inventory of your spousal relationship, like your communication with your husband, the amount of time that you're both okay with the other person leaving and going out and doing something. That's huge. Being aware of your home environment. What is that conducive for? Is it okay that you are not yet in your dream home, but maybe you are saving up or you are working really hard for that in the future? Is it okay that you don't have the space for the garden that you long for, but you are making it work with pots on your back porch as we are? Or are you on a homestead and you're realizing that you don't have the time and energy to maintain this and you really just want to pare down? We've also talked to those folks before, and it's so freeing for them when they do move back into more of a suburban setting and they recenter their family because other things are being pulled in their family structure. Maybe their work is just requiring a ton of effort and energy, and they're in a season of really intense problem solving within work. Maybe they have a corporate job that is going through a reorganization and they have to really focus and spend those longer hours in the office. Maybe they're in ministry and they're launching a new ministry within that, or they are stepping into a new leadership role. These things you just have to be aware of the stress and strain they're going to put on your family so that you can continue to build your internal structure to support what you want. So looking at your spousal relationship, your home environment, your work obligations, whatever that looks like for you. And then your children and your family. Are you growing your family? Do you have the space to grow your family? Not just rooms in your house, but like the mental and emotional capacity. Is that something that you are allowing yourself to step into? More children is always going to be part of the conversation of, is your family structure built to support it? It's a great question to ask. So all of this is just the thoughts that I was preparing before recording this show about how to build a life you love, because I think after at least the last 5 years, I feel like I've been able to hone in on rhythms and routines and family structure and home life to say that I wake up every day and I really do love my life. And I know that that is a huge privilege and a blessing. And so I'm very thankful for that. But I also think there's some strategy involved in that. And these aren't just things that I've come up with. It's things I've learned from other people. Most of them I've learned from folks that we've interviewed on the podcast or in conversations I've had with Joey or asking my parents how they used to view their life in different ways. And so I think anytime you can glean wisdom from other people who have found a rhythm and routine that works for them, they feel like I love my life every day. I always want to hear the behind the scene details of that. So I hope this episode was helpful. I hope that it made sense and resonated with you. And yeah, I am just super grateful for the day to day, loving my life where it doesn't feel like I'm just waiting for the next vacation or the weekend. And so my hope and prayer is that that is something that y'all aspire to as well, and you reach that and it's attainable. And maybe through some of the points that I brought up today or the questions that I'm leaving you with, you can have conversations with your spouse to really reach that. So if you guys want to find us, connect with us deeper, there's several ways to do that. Joey and I are on Instagram. I'm at Liz Haselmayer. He's at Joey Haselmayer. Go check out the moose he just got with his bow because it's insane. He set a record, he broke a 24-year record for his moose outfitter in Newfoundland. And it's just incredibly exciting. And I'm so proud of him. You can also follow along with the community at homegrown_education. We share lots of content over there. We have Substack if you want to dive deeper into exclusive podcast content, blog articles, recipes, things like that. And then those books that I was talking about shipping out, all those resources you can find at homegrowneducation.org, or you can look up our retail business, Haselmayer Goods, at shopbh.com. So until next time.